Hey everyone, it's Ken here again with another little power query in video for you. This one here is, well, I found this kind of interesting, and I'll be honest with you, I've used Power Query for a long time and I've never really stumbled on this, mainly because I generally only land a single Power Query table to a single worksheet. But in a recent client project, I actually had a scenario where I had two tables that were set up on the same worksheet, one above the other. And this led to the discovery of some weirdness as to how a Power Query table refresh actually works. So what we're going to look at in this video is exactly what happens and how it's not really consistent from rows to columns and some of the stuff that you can do about it. So let's head over to Excel and take a look. Now, this worksheet looks like a bit of a mess, okay? But bear with me here. The important part is that we have a table here that is reading from a query. I'm pulling that up from the data over here. It's not doing anything to it. It's just refreshing it and landing it over here. Now, over on the sides here, I've got some nice little orange areas with some values in it. And what I want to show you right now is that if I go and right click and just refresh my query, as you would expect, the query is going to go through, it's going to refresh, everything is going to be fine. And we don't see any shifting in the values that we have over here. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we make this a little bit wider. So I'm going to add one more column to my data, and I'm going to go right click, and I'm going to choose to refresh. And what you can see here is that the table has expanded, but notice the blank down here. So what's actually happened is that in order to make your Power Query table wider, it inserts an entire new column. It doesn't just shift the data over. Now, this is good in some ways in that all of these guys still line up, but it's also frustrating in others because that's going to have implications, as you're going to see. Now, to make things even weirder, check this out. Let's go and make this a little bit narrower again and right click and refresh. So when the table shrinks, it actually does use the shifting behavior of shifting just the values in those rows. Now, this probably makes sense because you wouldn't want to delete the entire column because there might be something else underneath it, and that could potentially be problematic. But obviously, it's inconsistent. I'm actually a little bit surprised that there's no option to be able to say, hey, you know what? Why don't we shift instead of inserting an entire new column? I kind of wish there was. All right, now let me move some of the stuff back just so we can sort of see where this stuff goes. And let's take a look at what happens when we add new rows. So if I go and add new rows here, I'm going to go and add, I don't know, we'll add 3 new rows. We're going to say right click and we're going to choose refresh. And on this case, you can see that it does not insert entire new rows. It just shifts the data down. Now, that's completely inconsistent with what's happening on the column side, where it is inserting an entire new column. And if I go and make this a little bit shorter, we'll take it back to the 3 row side, right click and hit refresh, and it's going to shift those things back into place. So the shifting up and down is consistent. The horizontal movement, adding a new column, inserts a new column, but it does a shift behavior when it actually collapses. I really wish, honestly, that the shifting behavior was standard both for adding and removing columns inside a table. That would make things a lot better. Now, why does this become into play and why did I even discover this in the first place? Well, it's because I actually had another table below my data. So at this point, when I now go and say, let's add one more column, right click and refresh, my second table gets a new blank column in the middle of it. And that's super, super irritating. I don't want that. Now, of course, we can also make this smaller. And as you can imagine here, when we do that, it's not going to change anything in the lower table, but it does shift the other one back. So if the number of columns are changing here, this can lead to some very, very strange things happening as you're going. But it actually gets worse than this, okay? So what happens now when we go and say, let's add one more row? Just one, that's all we need. Click, refresh. It won't work. Why? Well, it won't work because it's trying to shift these 3 cells down. And that means that it needs to now break the table in order to make it happen. So we can't insert new rows. On the other hand, if we were to go and let's just resize our table here so that we have all 5 columns. I'm going to go right click and refresh here. Oh, this still isn't going to work because it's trying to shift things down, I think. Yeah. So let me just make this a little bit shorter, although it definitely would seem to do something, but we'll shorten it back to the original 3 rows. We'll hit refresh. So this is going to now go and expand our table width. Of course, it's added a whole bunch of weird columns in the middle. I don't need those. So let's go and grab these, right click. We're going to go delete the table columns. We'll get this back to the same shape here. So we have the same number of columns. And now we can refresh because we're trying to shift the same number of columns down as what we have in the table below. So this would sort of be your first trick if you want with these things. If you are going to stack 2 tables and the top one is going to actually have its number of rows increasing here and you want it to shift like that, you're going to want to pad it with a couple of extra rows in the top table or a couple of extra columns rather, to make sure that it's got the same number of columns to force the other table down. Now, that's a little bit weird, but do we have any other options to control these things? And as it turns out, we do. So I'm going to go and I'm going to actually just roll this back just a little bit here. And I'm going to refresh my table here. This is going to shift things back up. And now I'm just going to roll this back to my 3 columns. And I did it in that order so that I can actually make this work, of course. This is all a bit of a mess here. So I'm just going to go back and remove these things back into the area that I want to see them. All right. So what options do we actually have? So the first thing that I'll say on this one is that I actually went to start working with the query output because I thought, hey, this has got to be where these options are going to stay, right? Because this is specific, got to be specific to Power Query. So I'm looking on this tab here and I did find a properties one. So I'll click a look at that. And this is all of the query properties, but has nothing to do with the table at all. Okay, that's fine. Let's just kill that one off. Let's look at table design. And on table design, we also have properties. Now, in our table design properties, we do have one here that's awesome. Like this is the same one that you use kind of for pivot tables to stop the auto resizing on things. So often I will actually change this one, but I never really paid a lot of attention to what's going on down below here. So notice the default behavior: insert cells for new data, delete unused cells. That's what's actually happening in this particular case. What if we did insert entire rows for new data in clear cells? Let's see what happens if we do this and we say, let's go and add a new column. Right click, refresh. All right, so we're still getting the insert column behavior. That's not ideal. Let me get rid of that. Delete table columns. But notice we've still got 1 column less than what this table does. So previously, if we tried to add more data and shift things down, it would have actually blocked it. We'd get the error. But we've toggled the settings. So if we go and re-roll this one down here now, and we go and say right click and refresh, what it's now doing is it's saying, okay, we can put new data in here. So this seems to be working. Now I've got 3 more rows here. Let's see what happens because there is some data in the way here. Let's go and refresh again. And now we can see that it found new data. So it actually has inserted new rows, but it's only inserted as many new rows as it actually needed. Okay, that's kind of interesting, kind of useful. Of course, like we had with our other one where we're adding new columns and then shifting them, if we now go back and refresh, this is going to shorten it down. It's obviously not going to clean up the rows because it wouldn't want to delete the rows. So this is a little bit better, although the behavior of inserting new columns is still wonky, right? I'd kind of like to have the ability to control things so that it is inserting new rows in this way, but new columns, it's just doing an overwrite. Well, let's go take a look. What option do we have here? So if we take a look at table design in this case, we can go back into properties. We have overwrite existing cells with new data and clear unused cells. Okay, let's try this one. Now, before I go too far with this, I am going to go and just delete these cells. So I'm going to shift them up. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to go and make this one even a little bit shorter with this one here. Okay, let's go and delete this one a little bit more. Shift those up. There we go. And I'm going to move my data over here back to where I want it to be so it's nice and bordered in appropriately. Okay. So what happens if we now go and make our table taller? We're going to go and add 2 new rows. Okay. Right click, refresh. It overwrites those values. If we go 1 more row, refresh, it overwrites this. So this is different than what we had previously where it actually started to insert new rows. This one just says, hey, overwrite it. I'm going to add 3 more rows, but I've only got 2 more rows before my table. So obviously this is now going to collide. So we're going to go and we're going to refresh. And at this point, I get an error because it says, look, you cannot do this. You're going to be overwriting your table. That's going to cause some problems. I'm okay with this, actually. This is fine. This works for me because when I'm setting something up and I have a table up top, I generally either put in some padding or I know how many rows are going to be showing up in that area. So that's okay. I'm good with that. What happens if we now go horizontally? If we go and we add this one here, I better shorten it down a little bit though, right? So we'll go and we'll shorten that one down. If we refresh, this one here is going to go and overwrite data in this particular case as well. If we go back and refresh, notice that even though we overwrote data, when we actually shorten it, it's still shifting. And I don't think that that should actually happen. That should just be restricting the size of the table and not actually shifting the data. So no matter what you get, if you reduce the number of columns, it's always going to be doing that shift action across. There's no way of getting away from that. It also seems to go through and unless you set this last setting here, is going to go and insert new columns, which is actually going to break the table down below and it starts inserting new columns there. It's awesome that we have the ability to go through and control what happens on an expansion vertically. I really wish we had more options to be able to control things on a horizontal expansion contraction level as well. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we do. So there you go. That's some of the weirdness I ran into when we're actually working with these things. I will say that I think that my sort of preferred setup for most of these things is actually to do an overwrite. I understand how that works. I know generally what the boundaries are I'm looking for. If I'm not going to do that, I'm probably going to go with this insert entirety rows. In other words, I'm going to change the default behavior, which generally isn't working for me. But do watch out for that horizontal expansion that happens when your upper table starts inserting new columns. If it's not the same width as the one below, you'll start getting blank columns in the table down below. So in an ideal world, tables should probably live on different worksheets. But if you do have a need to put them in the same place, you now know all the quirkiness of exactly how Excel goes to handle row update, delete, and column update, delete actions.